Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Wisdom Wednesday. Today is the 9th of October. We are in Proverbs chapter 9, exploring the text, applying it to our lives so that hopefully we can live wiser lives today than we did last week, yesterday, and moving forward. What we're doing here on Wisdom Wednesdays is we take the corresponding day of Proverbs to the month and we explore the text together and try to extract principles, truth, and wisdom from it that we can apply to our lives. In Proverbs chapter 9, it ends the 9-chapter back and forth discussion between the call of folly or foolishness or the mocker or the sluggard versus the call of wisdom. And so what we see is there's lots of elements that go into the call of the fool or the mocker or the sluggard, and there's one predominant call from wisdom. In fact, in chapter 8, we see that wisdom was there when the foundations of the earth were laid, and it was that it is the wisdom that God has, that God spoke the universe into existence, that is the wisdom that calls out and asks and gives and invites us to pursue. In Proverbs chapter 9, Solomon declares that wisdom and folly both stand on top of the highest place in the city and call out to all those who would wander past. What we see in this, friends, is that the concept behind this is that there would be a point of communication within the city. Nowadays, it's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's these points where communication exists regularly, and both a direction of folly and a direction of wisdom call out from the same places of communication with a similar invitation. But what we'll notice in Proverbs 9 is that the depth, what is behind those invitations, is what makes the difference. So, in Proverbs chapter 9, it says, "Wisdom has built her house; she has set up its 7 pillars. She has prepared her meat, mixed her wine, and set her table, sent out her servant, and she calls from the highest point of the city, 'All who are simple, come to my house. Those who have no sense, come, eat my food, drink the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways, and you will live. Walk in the way of the light,'" and the way of insight, Adversely, verse 13 says, "Folly is an unruly woman. She is simple and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house on a seat at the highest point of the city, calling out to those who pass by, who go straight on their way. 'Let all who are simple come to my house.' To those who have no sense, she says, 'Stolen water is sweet. Food eaten in secret is delicious.' But little do they know that the dead are there and that her guests are deep in the realm of the dead." And so what we see here is these opposing calls, these invitations. They sound similar at the onset. Same location, highest point in the city, both outside of a house, both calling out to the simple, "Come and eat." But what is being offered is very different between the two. On the one hand, wisdom has built her own house. Wisdom has prepared her own food, her own wine. She has sent out those who work with her, who are part of her team, and she calls out and she offers something of value to people. "Come, all who are simple, and I will give you insight." However, folly, on the other hand, sits at the door of her house. It doesn't say whether or not she's built the house. She sits at this door. There's an inactivity. There is a lazy presumption that exists in that wording. She sits at the door of her house, and her invitation to the simple is not one of come and see the accomplishments, what you can partake in. It's come and eat, for stolen food is good, and it tastes sweet. One is entitled and it's taking rather than giving. The other one is giving from the works of our hands. And that wisdom, when we pursue wisdom, we experience and have value that we can share with others in an appropriate way. For it says in verse 12, "If you are wise, your wisdom will reward you. If you are a mocker, you alone will suffer." I think even more so, when we are mockers, we actually cause those around us to suffer. And when we are wise, we cause those around us to be elevated. So friends, our choice here is the same that Solomon lays out in Proverbs chapter 9. Which voice will we lean to when the voice of calm speaks? Will we go the direction of lazy entitlement or of some work and wisdom and knowledge that might be difficult but is actually real and tangible at the end of the day? Correction is hard to stomach. It is difficult to be rebuked. But when we accept the rebuking, when we accept the correction, then we can make better choices moving forward. When we acknowledge what went wrong the first time, we can adjust our course of direction moving forward. These are things that Solomon declares are those that the wise do. In fact, in verse 10, we have one of the most, I would say, memorable verses of Proverbs altogether. It says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For through wisdom your days will be many, and years will be added to your life. What Solomon encourages us here and ends his story time with in Proverbs chapter 9 is that it is from a place of reverence, from a place of respect and acknowledgement of who God is and who we are, that we are not God, and that we need to look to God for wisdom, that we look to the Holy One for understanding and for knowledge, that it is only in that position of looking to who God is, to what his principles are, how he's taught us to live, that we can begin to understand wisdom and knowledge. Now, some of us might come to some wise and knowledgeable things without knowing the Lord, but it is from a position of understanding who God is that propels us along this path of wisdom, so that we can actually identify some of the voices of folly in our life, the calls and invitation of the foolish, the mocker, the sluggard, the entitled, and we can reject those calls and change our course of direction to be moving towards the call and invitation of godly wisdom and principle. So as we look at today's scriptures, passages found in Proverbs chapter 9, my encouragement to you is to be attentive to the calls and the invitations you hear. Is this a call in the direction of wisdom, or am I listening to the call in the direction of folly? For one of them will actually have real, tangible, valuable results, and the other one will not. One will be sustainable and will be something that builds and shares, and the other is one that destroys and takes. And as we go through life, we are called to be people who share openly and willingly with those around us, both what we've learned and also what we have received. And so I encourage you to respond to the voice of wisdom. In the book of James, chapter 1, it says that if any of us lack wisdom, that we should earnestly ask God, who will lavish his wisdom upon us. And so if you find that you're in a position right now where you are lost for some wisdom, I would encourage you to do what James in chapter 1, verse 5 says, to earnestly ask God, God, would you give me wisdom for this situation? Because I don't know what to do. And as you listen to the voice of peace speak in your life, perhaps God will give you some insight and wisdom to follow, pursue, and to avoid a path of foolishness moving forward. So I want to encourage you with that today, friend. Thank you so much for listening to our Wisdom Wednesday today. I hope that as you continue to listen and perceive the knowledge and insight and the wisdom of God, that you will see the real and tangible things that he does in your life as you walk in obedience to his principles. Bless you, and thank you for joining us. We will see you next week.